Call to order this July 19th meeting of the Grant County Board of Commissioners. Please join us in the salute to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico to be a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Approval or rearrangement of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to amend the agenda by moving item P, approving or disapproving the resolution determining the Grant County, New Mexico Department of Health lease appropriation bonds at Fort Baird, Series 2008, maturing after 2019, to immediately after the Gila Regional Medical Center report, and further amendment to move item that would be 16 U and V to immediately after public input. That would be an executive session in accordance with NMSA 1978-1015-1H. That's a discussion of disposal of Grant County property, including Gila Regional Medical Center, NMSA 1978-1015-1H, and any action necessary as a result of a closed session to immediately after public input and before minutes.
I'll second the motion, but I do have a question. What is the purpose of moving the bond discussion, item T?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we have representatives from the Department of Health here from out of town in respect for their schedules, and it was requested that we could move that up.
I don't think it's going to take long.
We have the hospital reports, that action item, public input, executive session, which we believe will be short, decision on the hospital, and then proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Yes.
I like that.
Second it then.
I did. I second it so we can discuss it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda approved as amended. Gila Regional Medical Center report. Ms. Arias?
That was a shock.
Oh, yes, she is. And Richard Stokes, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, I didn't hear my name called.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Kathy Arias is the Chief Executive Officer of Gila Regional, and Richard Stokes here with her is the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, and good morning. I had a very restless night last night, as I'm sure everyone has, and I was trying to think, if this being possibly my last report to you, what I wanted to include in that. And I think it's business as usual. That in itself speaks for so much about what we do at Gila Regional day in and day out. We have tried to remain focused as much as possible and keep business as usual going through this very trying time. And I tell you, I have been increasingly moved by the passion of the people in this region, in this county, in this city. And it all goes to show that when something of great importance is in question and possibly of being lost or possibly being changed, how people in this community rally together for the good of the whole. I want to thank all the commissioners for the time that they have spent in trying to do the appropriate investigation and get all of the facts together before making a very crucial decision about our hospital. And having said all of that, I would like to tell you that items on our agenda moving forward, we now have all private rooms in our hospital, as we promised. We have a nurse internship program, which will not only assure a continual influx of talent into our nursing staff, but also invigorate the current staff that we have in that teaching mode. We have relationships now with other medical schools, and we will be bringing more residency programs into our hospital to hopefully capture and mentor those physicians that will be taking care of all of us in the future. We have pursued contracts with a new general surgeon coming in, and he has signed a contract, and he has to go through credentialing, MEC approval, and the board approval before going forward. But it all looks very positive for us, and it looks positive for the people in this community. I really want to thank not only all of the commissioners and our physicians and our staff and our board of trustees, past and present, that have had this county and the people in this county in their hearts at all times. Some decisions may be wrong, some decisions are right, some process is wrong, some process is right. And that just underscores the fact that we are all human beings making great strides to do the right thing in our lives. So with having said all of this, I'd like to turn it over to Richard just to highlight some of the financial things that we have done and things that we have discovered this past month, to share that with you in the spirit of transparency, which we want to make sure happens going forward with our hospital and our county commissioners. So, Richard?
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. This is the financial report for Gila Regional for the month of May, which is our 11th month. And I'm going to go hit some highlights, and I know all of you have had an opportunity to review this report, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. So for the month of May, the hospital reported excess expenses over revenue of $183,000. That brings our year-to-date loss through 11 months to $510,000, compared to this time last year, a $6.9 million loss. Looking ahead to next month, I do want the commissioners to know that that $6.9 million was what was actually reported this time last year, and that's what we're reporting today. But there was about $4 million of adjustments done during our audit process, so we actually ended last year at $2.7 million loss, and not the $7 million that is tracking right now. Also, to give you an update on June, we have tentatively closed the books for the month of June. We did have some census challenges in June, which brought our revenue down. We missed our average revenue by about a little over $2 million. So we ended the month about $600,000 in the red. So we anticipate closing the year at about a $1.1 million loss. So, having said that, I do want to make a couple of notes of interest that is on the data that I sent you. We have worked our discharge not final coded down to less than 2 days. That's the national average, so we're happy about that. We have been working diligently at strengthening our concurrent coding process within the hospital, and that helps us derive a higher case mix index, which ultimately results in higher reimbursements for the hospital. And our physician staff have been really, really good at working with us on that. We have corrected multiple revenue code mapping errors within the system, and we have completed probably 15 to 20 other corrections within Meditech to get the data to flow correctly in the month of May. We also, for a Meditech update, we're still scheduled to go live with the 615 update on August 22nd. We do meet We have a formal meeting once a week, but we have informal meetings just about every day to make sure where we need to devote additional resources, we get those resources over there to it. So we're still proceeding very nicely with that project. On page 2, we had 457 patient days, which gave us an average length of stay of 2.8 days versus 3.2 last year. Cash collections was $4.88 million. Our days cash on hand was 63. Our gross days in AR remained at 69. Our days in accounts payable, we dropped that down to 51. Our case mix index, to relate it to our work with the concurrent coding process, our case mix index was 1.517, which was a good number. So the next page just gives you our payer mix by revenue and by AR, and I'm going to talk a little specifically about some specifics that we have been working on. And really, so you all know that we've been working really hard the last 2 to 3 months improving the revenue cycle, and we've made a lot of changes, not only in how we function the revenue cycle, but also our internal processes, correcting that mainly through Meditech. So for the 12-month average collection percentage, we've been averaging about 30%. In June, we have, which I'll be reporting to our board, we have moved that percentage up to 32%. So we're slowly increasing our collection percentage, the charges. And my goal is to get that up to around 35, 36%. And that's where we're going. We're on the road there now. I'm happy with the early results. So we're seeing that. I did talk a little bit about, with other groups, about our unbilled. Unbilled is the amount of claims that are sitting there that have been discharged but haven't been billed. So at the end of May, we had $5.2 million in unbilled that should have been billed. So in June, we ended at $1.59 million. Today is hovering around $785,000 roughly. So we have put the processes in place to manage to get those bills out the door much faster than we've been doing in the past. So I'm really happy about that. So any questions for me?
Questions?
I do want to, if I may, Chairman, so this past month we did initiate raises for our bedside nursing that we've been talking about for months. And we did commission a company to do a study so we could logically apply the raises where they needed to be made for bedside nursing. We initiated that. I believe this will be the first pay period that takes effect, the one coming up. So that's going to cost the organization about $600,000 a year. So, we're all aware of that we have to come up with $600,000 of cost reductions in various places, and we are working that. Probably the biggest thing, if I may, for the past 3 months, we've been working really hard at just specific components of just the revenue cycle, meaning narrowly defined up to this week as business office and medical records. We expanded that this week to include pharmacy. And what we have found, I don't like to use the word found, but the current situation is the pharmacy module has multiple opportunities for improvements. So what we have determined is the system wasn't built correctly to work correctly. So that's making our nurses and our pharmacy staff do a lot of manual work when the system can do it themselves. So it's not as much of a patient safety issue, but it is an issue on reimbursement. So what we have learned this week is when we submit a claim to an insurance company, and if the data is not exactly right, which is not in a lot of cases, they disregard that line item and pay the rest of the claim. So we have multiple people working on that this week. We expect to have some resolution of that by end of week next week. So, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, so how much money do you think was left on the table by that reimbursement issue there?
Probably several $100,000 in reimbursable cash, at least,
In a month?
in a year.
In a year.
Yes.
So you have that one, that's an opportunity or a challenge, whichever way you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have an opportunity with the Cancer Center.
Yes,
The
sir.
Cancer Center, once it becomes fully operational, what do you think that's going to bring to the bottom line?
I suspect, given prior year, and I'm just looking at prior years projecting forward, I would think that should add another $1 million at least in bottom line impact, because we're only about halfway to where we were at this time last year. And so once we get an oncologist on board, the volumes will increase and the number of patients we see will increase, and we'll be doing the things that we need to do for the community. And that, just by the very nature of it, will translate into additional dollars for Hill Regional.
So you were talking about the end of your May being in the minus 500,000 for the year.
Yes, sir.
And so your June was, and you mentioned your challenges with the revenue, with the
Yes, sir.
census. Was there
So there were,
any other extraordinary things you may have written off
Yes,
that
sir.
would change? Because that's,
Yes, sir.
June was half your loss.
yes, sir. So as we go through the AR cleanup, we administratively adjusted slightly more than $4 million in old accounts that were no longer collectible that were still sitting on our active AR. So we took care of that, and that had a negative impact. Now, the reason why it's not $4 million is we've reserved the vast majority of that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Can you just speak briefly to your other opportunities going forward that would give us hope for higher revenues?
So assuming that the decision is made that we will continue, on Monday we will start the process of converting our primary care practice to a rural health clinic. So that should generate $250,000 a year in additional profit for the organization. We've already had discussions with our cost report preparer, because all of these things hinge on where the clinics show up on the Medicare cost report. So we had our first meeting with BKD last week. We told them what our plan was, so they know that we're watching where those numbers fall on the cost report. The cost report is also critical this year as we move toward critical access status, because our initial base rates will be based on the cost report we filed in October. So we're spending a lot of time making sure that we communicate with our cost report preparers, anticipating where we're going in the future. So those are both fairly large organizational change. Beyond that, we're looking at expanding our 340B program to include an in-house limited pharmacy. So once we set that up, then we intend to have the first prescription filled before the patient leaves the hospital, so they don't have to initially go to the drugstore. The second and third prescriptions, will be transitioned to the area pharmacies, and because that's not our intent to be a full service pharmacy. That's why I refer to it as limited services. Once we also will be marching at the same time down to create a community pharmacy program through the 340B program, so that we can generate additional resources or being cash to the organization. It helps the Walgreens and the CVS's. They get a new revenue stream as well. So we're walking down that road as well. But again, it's how things are reflected on the cost report that's going to make those projects viable moving forward. So those are probably the big items that's going to consume a lot of time, but
Just to add on to that, you have all been privy to our strategic plan. There is not one change on that strategy. We are committed to that. We've already started working on it, and we are committed to having every item completed on that strategy.
Thank you. Other questions?
When it comes to the bedside nurses, you said at 600,000 per year. What is the average per nurse that we went up per hour?
I can't tell you exactly what the average was, but some nurses got a bump of up to $12,000 a year. And this is only for full-time and part-time bedside nurses. We are gradually going into each section of the hospital, and we will be looking at wages for every employee.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to give a quick back-of-the-envelope calculation, as is my want. 600,000, if you have a 2,000 hour a year, it's $300 per hour. If you have 150 nurses receiving that raise, it's $2 an hour per nurse. Now, I'm not including benefits, and I don't know if they did or not, but just as a rough estimate, that's what went through my head.
Well, that superficially, that may be correct, but that's not the level at which we investigated these raises. There were nurses that were hired at a higher cost rate that did not get the other one. So what we did is we did a very thorough analysis. We gave, for years of service in an acute care facility, a percentage. And we did not include years of service if one had been a school nurse or a home health nurse, because that nursing experience does not equate into the severity of what we do in an acute care facility. So there were some that got higher and there were some that got none.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the high level of information that you're giving us. Probably so high that I can't digest it all, but this is a big change from the past, and I hope that going forward, should the vote be to remain independent, that we can continue to get enough information to keep an eye on the finances of Healy. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
At this time, we're moving to agenda item P under Roman numeral X, resolutions. Mr. McDonald. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Did you want me to present anything?
I'm just asking the county manager questions.
Okay.
If you just wanted to give them a brief synopsis of what you're doing and why and where we are in the process and what the next steps are after their decision on this resolution, that might be helpful.
Sure. So on July 1 of 2019, the bonds became callable for the first time in, I think it's about 9 years now. And so the Department of Health is looking to exercise their option to purchase the hospital and the land associated with the hospital. A couple of reasons. One is interest rates. Interest rates are lower than they were back in 08-09, and so we can capture some significant savings if we do it now. And the second item is really goes to capital improvement of the hospital. And what we find is a need to expend capital dollars to maintain the facility. And as a state, we're not allowed to expend, we're not even appropriated capital dollars for a piece of property that's not owned by the state. And so we have really limited resources to spend capital dollars on the improvement. They end up coming out of the operational budget, which with some of the projects we need to do can't be absorbed in the operational budget. We can do small projects, but we can't do large projects. And so we need appropriations from the state in order to fund those capital improvements that we so desperately need to do. And so that's really where we're at today. So the department has made notification to the county manager of our intent to exercise that option, and we're just looking for approval of the resolution so we can move forward and wrap this deal up.
Okay, so simply stated, as you just did, just to make sure everyone gets this, you've had an option to purchase, and you're exercising that option. So this isn't, it's not a choice that this commission can make whether you exercise the option to purchase Fort Barrett, but it is as presented as a very good thing for Grant County that you are exercising your option, and we're just approving the resolution that would facilitate the purchase of, not Fort Barrett, sorry, but the Fort Barrett Medical Facility. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve resolution number R-18-19.
Second. Any discussion?
Well, I have a question. So they will be calling the bonds, repaying bondholders, and they will be paying the county for the appraised value of the unimproved land, right? It says unimproved in here.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Is there any other revenue flow I should be thinking about?
No, sir, we're a conduit agency. We're just a conduit agency for these bonds. And it is, as he just described, it's somewhat of a deterrent for them to access additional capital. And as I explained in the work session, it would be my recommendation, it is our financial advisor's recommendation, as well as our bond counsel, that we move forward with this transaction and allow them to exercise their right to purchase the property and redeem the bonds.
So, I wasn't around when this was done, but I was always told it was improved. So what happens, just the elephant in the room, what if the appraised value is not enough to repay the bonds?
I don't believe that that's the issue. The concern that occurred to me was there are the deliverables that I explained to you on Tuesday. My concern is the price of the title insurance, and that the appraisal of the unimproved land might not cover the cost of the title insurance. However, Department of Health has done some research on that. Our council has done some research on that. That's something that we can discuss at that point, but we feel confident that the county's not going to lose any money in this transaction.
Because this could be big enough, it could be big money. If we did, just saying.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you on behalf of the Secretary of the Department of Health.
Thank you. Moving on to public input. During this portion of our meeting, we welcome your suggestions and want to hear your concerns. This won't be a question and answer period. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. I'm expecting that we'll have a large number of speakers. If you can say what you need to say in less time than that, and that would be welcome also. Any individual who'd like to discuss an item in more length in the future can request to be placed on a future agenda. And those request forms are in the manager's office. So, should we try to do this by category or just go for it? Okay.
Not a bad idea. Do by category. It's an interesting approach. Just
by a raise of hands, is there how many people are here to speak on the hospital issue? And on the wildlife services issue? Okay. What's your preference? Okay. Since we were talking about Gila Regional Medical Center, anyone who'd like to come speak on the hospital issue? Please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Manning, and I'm here to ask you to retain local control of the hospital. During the course of this process, I've heard some of you all be concerned that the prospective buyers would lose interest if we retained control at this time. And I think that that's a false consideration. I think that the prospective buyers have seen that y'all have engaged in a fair process and that you've given it real consideration. However, at the same time, we've had a change in management at the hospital, and we've seen them moving in a very positive direction, and they have not been given enough time to conclude all their efforts. And I believe that the only opportunity that's going to be lost potentially is that if we sell the hospital, we will not have the potential to have the local ownership. We can always look at selling it again in the future, but we cannot always retain ownership in the future. So thank you for considering that. Thank you for this long process that you've engaged in, and please consider strongly retaining ownership of the hospital.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Janet Wallet-Ortiz, and I'm going to thank the commissioners and chair for the opportunity to speak. First, I want to state my total, and this is a combo thing, so it's mainly about the hospital, but I want to state my total and vehement protest against signing the Wildlife Services contract also. Archaic, deadly trapping and poison should never be used to control wildlife. In addition, any agency that takes taxpayers' money and is never held accountable for its use needs to stop being funded immediately. Well, deja vu, here we are again. Not too long ago, people were lined up to speak to the hospital board of trustees to protest the cancellation of a long-held contract at the cancer center. Today, we are here to call on the powers that be to save our entire hospital from the clutches of a for-profit corporation after months and months of clouded secrecy on the part of our commission and Juniper Advisory. Thank you, Commissioner Chair Billings, for your column in the Silver City Press, listing all the reasons for not selling our hospital. Commissioner Billings said a lot has changed since we began asking serious questions about the financial condition of our county-owned hospital. The trustees are working long, hard hours without pay to bring changes to GRMC. Selling the hospital is not an appropriate or necessary solution. The trustees and the commissioners need to work together toward a better hospital for the community. Once we go down this road, we can never come back. GRMC is a 4-star hospital with a leapfrog A rating, which has to do with patient safety. Gila Regional Medical Center has already begun a financial turnaround. GRMC has presented an excellent, detailed, long-term strategic financial plan, and on and on. We can be the commission that saved the hospital, not the commission that sold out and gave up. Even though the plan to remain independent is not without risk, GRMC can prosper under the right leadership. Thanks to the physicians, the nurses, the citizens, and all who wrote letters, sent emails, and had conversations about the fact that the hospital's current board and hospital employees, and basically all of us, want to keep this hospital from being stolen from us. You've got a wide spectrum of agreement. The president of Western, even Brian from Big O Tire. Selling our hospital is right in line with current for-profit health care in our country that has failed so miserably to insure millions of Americans and has directly led to the death of thousands who can't afford to see a doctor. While most Americans favor health care as a right, single-payer, Medicare for all, some Grant County commissioners still want to push our health care into the hands of a corporation who will most certainly run our hospital into the ground once the profits aren't there, while pumping money out of our community to some corporate headquarters. Commissioners, you've heard from a broad spectrum of people in this community who are completely against selling this hospital. Do what you you are commissioned to do and respect the will of the people. We are not in Trump territory, are we? Do not sell our hospital. I think Dr. Etheridge stated it well in his letter to the press. GRMC will not thrive or even survive in a community that is split with competing agendas and a flawed process. Thus far, the process for determining the hospital's future has been hampered by a lack of transparency at all levels. It also suffers from a lack of shared vision, trust, and leadership, in which various stakeholders are open and engaged with the community to develop a truly viable future for GRMC. The county commission, and this would be a way out, should table the current discussions for the immediate future and release Juniper Advisory's results. All stakeholders should share their information fully and be transparent with the public. First and foremost, we must get this process right. We have an opportunity to strategically shape healthcare for the area so that we and GRMC can succeed and thrive. And I want to do one more thing. I'm going to get down on my hands and knees and beg. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Steve May. Been a long-time resident of Silver City and Grant County, and I have had numerous contacts with Gila Regional over the past few years regarding health issues. I have to say they have been nothing but very professional. I have no complaints about the service I received. I'm here to propose an option that you might want to consider. I don't even know if it can be done. One way that maybe you could raise some needed revenue would be to put a question on a ballot of adding 1/8 of 1% sales tax with the money raised to go into a special fund controlled by the commission, that the hospital can present proposals to use that money for various projects, thereby releasing other money that they generate to do even more projects. I think it should be put on the ballot, let the voters decide, put up or shut up. But I have been told that they thought that they could raise $600,000 a year with the sales tax. That's not a lot, but if you put a 5-year sunset or a 10-year sunset on that, and to where the voters know that it will end eventually, but over 5 years, potentially you could raise $3 million. It could be used for capital improvements, whatever, but it would have to be controlled by the county commission, the money. The hospital could come and make proposals to the board for the use of the money, and the county could approve or disapprove it. But this is just something I wanted to throw out. I think the voters would approve it if they want to save their hospital, and if it can be done legally, I think it ought to be seriously considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Melvin Gell. I know this is a serious decision to make. I know that in the last dozen years, over 100 rural hospitals have closed. And going forward in these precarious healthcare times, it's quite possible a number more will close. But I'm still in favor at this time of keeping Gila Regional Medical Center independent. The advantage of selling, for example, to someone like LifePoint, which, as far as I can tell from what I've Googled, is an excellent company, is they have deep pockets and can rely on deep corporate structure to help out this particular hospital, which a local independent hospital wouldn't really have. But the disadvantage is really serious. The disadvantage is if Gila Regional, over the next 5 years or 10 years, keeping independent, were to really go under, this community would, and I hate to use this phrase, but I will use it, this community will fight tooth and nail till the last dog dies to keep it open. But LifePoint is a corporate structure, okay? And presently they're not doing as well financially as they once have. In fact, on the market, they're at the lower end of their 52-week thing, about $46.50 the last time I looked per share. And if they really needed to close hospitals, I guarantee you they won't be closing Duke University Light Point Systems. They'll be closing small rural hospitals to save the corporate structure. And there'll be no way that they'll really consider the community. When they do that, they'll consider the bottom line. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Wendy Phillips, and first of all, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I don't need to repeat any of that. It's all been well said. I just want to make the point that the people are pretty clear as a community as to what they want. I agree that we need to try. We need to keep trying. And I think it's going to be a horrible debacle for all of you if you vote against them. It just doesn't make sense to do that because the community wants the risk. It wants to show up for this. And I think they've proven that they are showing up for it. So that's all I have to say about that. I also support what's going to be said about the wildlife. And I just want to say one thing about the vehicles, because I've been out of town. I haven't been able to speak publicly about these four-wheelers. I'm not against it. I have a real problem with the noise pollution in this town, in this county, in the rural areas as well as the city areas. And I think if they're going to pass that they really need to do a give here and make a commitment to enforcing the sound levels of vehicles, not just those vehicles, but also trucks and garbage trucks and all the vehicles that create way too much noise on the streets of our towns and on the county roads. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next. Thank you. Yes.
I guess all of you know me. I'm Carmen Gonzalez. I've been very active in the community. I've had a lot of calls, and I have talked to you, members, because people are very much against the sale of the hospital. You know, if you sell it, you're going to sell it to a business that's going to make money with us, not take care of us like the hospital does right now. You have hired an excellent CEO and staff members that are looking and improving what the previous CEO did not do. You talk to the CEO when you have a problem, and immediately she takes care of it. People have called us, I'm a member, and they call us, I talk to her, and things get done real good. I would like for you to consider this, that if you sell it, it's for money purposes, not for people that are sick. Please consider not sale of this hospital. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. I'm Kelvin Garland, and I sway both ways on this because I worked in the medical field with my work in the last 25 years in geriatrics, and I saw what happened when outside corporations came in and bought either nursing homes or assisted living facilities, and it progressed to be a bottom line of profit, and when it was not, it was sold off again or closed. I also know that our hospital system is in a great situation now. And as I think about it, I would like to encourage you all to postpone and take the gentleman's suggestion of the mill tax, because if the community is really serious about keeping it a community hospital, they will put up. If they don't, then they need to shut up. We need to shut up or put up. And so, as has been said, we can always come back to selling, but once it's sold, it is gone. So I would really like the commission to entertain this gentleman's idea of the mill levy for a specified period of time to give the new administration and group at the hospital an opportunity to further develop and succeed in what they have started putting together. We can always come back to selling, but once it's gone, it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on the hospital issue?
Hello, I'm Sunny McFerrin, and I was in hospital administration for 28 years. At a very large hospital in the Northeast, where I was vice president, I was asked to check what happened when communities that had had not-for-profit hospitals were then sold out to for-profit chains. I called on the American Hospital Association library. They responded that three things usually happened. One, prices increased by 6 to 20%. Two, up to 20% of employees were laid off. Three, a number of programs were discontinued. Things like patient advocacy, wellness programs, hospice, which we no longer have here anyway under the hospital, but programs that were very important to patients, but were not making a lot of money to bring to the bottom line. So I am concerned that those things would happen here. And this came from the American Hospital Association, for heaven's sakes. I'm also concerned, though, having been in strategic planning for many years, that there would be doctors and nurses who would not come to this community if it were a for-profit hospital. There would be some doctors, I've been told by doctors in town, who may leave if it becomes a for-profit hospital. And again, going back to strategic planning, I know that one of the major things the chamber here is asked when retirees look at coming into this community is about the hospital. And one plus, in their opinion, in the opinion of many of them, is that it is a freestanding, not-for-profit hospital. In 2002, there was an effort by the commissioners to sell the hospital to a for-profit chain. That time, they listened to the public and decided not to do that. One thing I've found interesting in all the information that's come out is that no one has mentioned what amount of money you would be getting and how it would be spent. And I'm concerned with no more than you've listened to community input this time, that again, those decisions would be made behind closed doors as well. I would plead with you. I can't get down on my knees because of my arthritis, okay? But please, do not sell this hospital. Please give Taffy and her crew, who have done such an excellent job in such a short period of time, a chance to continue making this a very viable, community-owned hospital.
Next.
I've only lived in Silver City for a year, but our coming to Silver City, one big attraction was that they have their own hospital. It's an independent.
Can we get your name? Sorry.
Dennis Martin.
Thank you.
And anyone who's worked in large institutions, and I have, knows that the level of care depends upon how satisfied and how stable a staff is. And people that have local control are more accountable to the patients that they see. They're more content with their jobs. Their turnover is much lower, and so the health care improves. And so I hope that this community, which is lucky to have this hospital, maintains local control. Thank you.
Anyone else on the hospital issue? If there's anyone else to speak on the hospital issue, would you raise your hand or come forward? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dustin Hammond, and I would just like to say that I didn't actually come here to speak about the hospital, but I'm very moved by just seeing what all these people have to say. I feel like we live in a society where our elders are not often given the respect they deserve, and I think that obviously the hospital is very important to our community. I make a point that not a single person has spoken towards the sale of the hospital, and I just wanted to step forward and say that I think it's in the best interest of our entire community, but particularly I know there are a lot of retirees and older people who rely on this, and I just wanted to speak up as part of the younger generation, hopefully still a little bit, in favor of supporting that, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Glenn Griffin. I'm the owner of Gila Tree Thinners. I'll be the first to speak about ADC Wildlife Services. I was here Tuesday at your work session, and I would never give a person a blank check. You are proposing to give ADC Wildlife Services a blank check. You have no accountability of where your money goes. We have never seen a report. You are business people, some of you. You should act in a business fashion. You should approve Commissioner Harry Brown's amendment to ask for accounting of the funding, how it is spent, if you must spend it. I personally have had 2 dogs trapped in Grant County in the last decade. One immediately adjacent to the Continental Divide Trail. We encourage tourism here, then we trap their dogs. It's beautiful. It's really inhumane. It is suffering not just for the animal, but for their humans too. Adopt Commissioner Brown's amendment to make this more businesslike instead of a blank check. Grant County no longer needs to be a third world county as far as trapping and being inhumane. There are much better solutions. You heard a motion about why we need trapping. Think of the children. Then you heard facts. Why we don't need trapping, poisoning. I hope we can move forward and leave Grant County not as a third world country, but welcome to the civilized world and ban trapping on public land.
Anyone else for public input? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Andy Payne. I'm a resident of Grant County. And I came to speak about the Wildlife Services contract, but I also want to say I really like the gentleman's idea about the hospital, about passing a tax that is funded, that goes just to the hospital that you guys administer, so you know that it's spent the way that we want it spent. If we keep the hospital public, you will have options like that to pursue in the future of creative ways of maybe keeping it going as a public hospital. If you sell up those options are gone, you won't be able to do anything about that. When you have a good solution suggested. Okay, I came to talk about the Wildlife Services contract. First of all, I want to say, I hear that the county commissioner's job is sometimes a thankless job, and I want to remedy that a little bit by saying thank you for serving, so it's not totally thankless. I'm concerned about how my tax dollars are spent, and I work at the volunteer center a couple times a month, distributing, help people distribute food, and I see hundreds of people there with needs. They need food, they need transportation, they need housing, they need mental health services. And these are the areas that I would like to see increased funding from the county. These are areas where we know there are needs and where we can actually see people being helped. But does anybody really know what benefits we get from the way Wildlife Services spends our money? I don't think so. I suggest that at least you don't renew their contract this year, and you require that they provide good, verifiable documentation of what they've done with the money that you've given them in the past. Then next year, you can make a decision about whether they deserve the money that they're asking for, instead of programs that we know are definite needs. In other words, make them accountable and justify their budget before they get any more of our tax dollars. Please vote no on funding this contract with Wildlife Services. There are many more pressing needs in Grant County. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Sons, and I'm a local outfitter. Thinking about the wildlife. First of all, I depend on the wildlife here. A lot of people that come to the wilderness here to employ my services, a lot of times when they ask, well, where's the wildlife? Because there has been a change in the number of wildlife here. All I can really say is that New Mexico is a killing state. And I'm here to kind of try to encourage you guys to do something different. This county has been historically extremely hostile toward native species, and starting with the Apache people. And now you continue with the wildlife here. And I really think that you guys are destroying a resource that we have here that is not really yours to dispose of. And it seems that there's a lot of people saying here, please don't do this, And again, I'm rather new to the American political system, but what I understand is that you guys are here to serve us, not for us to come to your help. And so you need to do these things for us. So I please encourage you to reconsider and not do this contract. Just do away with it. There's got to be other methods with the modern technology and everything. There should be something else we can do that's non-lethal to these animals. We live right next to a wildlife refuge. We live right next door to a large wilderness area. And what are you guys doing? You're promoting killing these animals that are here. These are native species that should be here. They're not yours to dispose of. They belong to future generations. Thank you.
Those are some tough acts to follow. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Donna Stevens. I'm the Director of the Upper Gila Watershed Alliance, but I'm speaking today as an individual. The last time the Wildlife Services contract was up for a vote, I attended the commission meeting and was one of just a couple of people to speak out against it. I'm really glad this issue has been brought to the public's attention. I'm one of the many people here in Grant County who's had the unfortunate experience of having my dog caught in a trap
in a well-traveled part of the Gila National Forest in Grant County. My dog was in front of me on a leash, so restraining dogs doesn't protect them at all from getting caught in a trap. Fortunately, that didn't turn out too bad. My dog wasn't permanently injured. Also, fortunately, I was with a big person who opened the trap while I restrained my dog, so it worked out okay. Of course, I can't really say whether that trap was set by Wildlife Services, which points to one of the many problems with this contract: lack of accountability. But more important than my personal distress in this experience, and my dog's as well, is the fact that Wildlife Services' so-called services are killing thousands of non-target species, often in cruel and inhumane ways. Worse yet, we have no evidence that this carnage remedies the stated problem of losses of cattle. Fortunately, there are non-lethal ways to address this issue. I urge you again not to renew the contract with Wildlife Services, or at the very least, amend the contract. Thank you.
John Beaver, and my concern is, the decimation of predators leads to a surplus of deer and rabbits and rats and all the other vermin that coyotes would normally eat. So, if you're going to trap the predators, maybe you can come out and trap some of my deer and rabbits. So, thank you.
Other public input.
Hello, my name is Joni Connors, and I'm here representing the Silver City branch of the Great Old Broads for Wilderness. We have about 50 members here in Grant County, and we stand opposed to renewing the proposed Wildlife Services contract at this time. And it's partly for the accountability issue, the lack of accountability, and also it's because we believe in our county's efforts to support tourism so it can bring local business, and we support hiking, camping, fishing, riding horses, hiking, and enjoying our outdoor resources, not poisoning for animals that are native to this area, and also trapping local dogs, which I know happens quite frequently. So it endangers the health of the people in this area by adding to the poison in our environment. Okay, so the contract should not be renewed without a thorough review of alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Caroline Fugali, and I'm a resident of Silver City. I would like to thank you for the work that you do and for listening to our comments. As a constituent, I respectfully request that 4 actions be taken here today with regards to the Grant County has with Wildlife Services. The mission of Wildlife Services that I obtained from their website is to address wildlife-related problems in a science-based manner that is both accountable and transparent. This has not been the case in our county, with only one poultry document submitted in the past 18 years. My first request is that quarterly reports be submitted explaining the use of expenditures as well as itemized invoices. The second request I have is that the funds of this contract be reallocated to more appropriate and effective means of action. I would like to quote from a document titled Work and Financial Plan Between Grant County and Wildlife Services. It states, "This program is to protect residents' property, livestock, crops, and natural resources from damage caused by predators and other nuisance wildlife. I want to point out the natural resources portion of this sentence. The reality is that this program's focus should shift to the critical work of addressing threats to native species and ecosystems posed by non-native invasive species. And here is one example. Some of you may know that we have a serious feral cattle problem in this nation's first wilderness. Just last week, a researcher was backpacking along the main stem of the Gila River and found one group of feral cattle numbering about 30 individuals. There were about 50 feral cows and bulls observed along the river between Sapio Confluence down to Turkey Creek, and feral cattle damage has been observed upriver to Allen Camp for a total of about 25 to 30 riparian miles. The Forest Service has been addressing this issue for many years without making much headway. I currently have an ongoing conversation with them about this issue, and they also want the animals off the river, but they state they need more money to address this issue more effectively. These cows and bulls are destroying our riparian ecosystem by eating and decimating the vegetation along the Gila River. This compromises the ecosystem's natural ability to reduce water velocity during high water flows. This high water velocity results in more serious downstream damage that otherwise would have been reduced by having the vegetation capture water and sediment in an intact ecosystem. May I remind you that these animals are extremely large and are indeed very wild and most definitely a nuisance. These animals are unpredictable, fast, and fierce and dangerous. They pose a serious human safety risk to our hikers. To reinforce the appropriate use of reallocating these funds, I would like to read from the Taylor Grazing Act, which is the document that defines how the monies can be used, and it states, should be used for the benefit of the whole county, wherever needed in the county, even to the exclusion of the federal ranges if the use of the funds should be deemed more necessary elsewhere. I think that using the Wildlife Service money and personnel to assist the Forest Service to remove feral population of cattle is a win-win situation. It will benefit our natural resources, benefit all of our county constituents, protect the conservation of soil and water, and protect our hikers. Request number 3, ban sodium cyanide. I again would like to read from the document titled Work and Financial Plan between Grant County and Wildlife Services. Under the stipulation under the restrictions exceptions, it states, techniques will be environmentally safe, sound, and selective. I stress the word selective. The sodium cyanide M44 bombs currently being used are neither environmentally sound nor selective. Request number 4, ban leg hold traps. Leg hold traps are also cruel and certainly not selective. Tens of thousands of native animals, including black bears, gray foxes, bobcats, cougars, and even protected species have been killed using taxpayer money. National Geographic has an article in their latest issue titled Poisoning Africa and explains how the Maasai herdsmen poison cow carcasses so entire lion prides have died in order to protect their domestic cows. Pesticide bomb kills millions of birds at a time to protect grain and rice crops. Poisoned seeds and fruits are put out to target elephants and monkeys in order to protect crops. We may read these statistics and cringe, but the killing we're doing in the United States is no different. Since 2012, more than 6.6 million native animals have fallen victim to Wildlife Service's killing program. This indiscriminate killing has to stop. We have now entered a new grim time in human history. Over half the world's wild vertebrate species has disappeared over the past 40 years. Does this make us proud that humans can obliterate anything that gets in our way? Is this the best that we can do? You have the chance right now today to change this trend with your vote, and I hope that you do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is April Lee. I'm a resident of Silver City, and I'm here to speak about the Wildlife Services contract as well. On May 2nd, 2013, my dog suffered a pretty horrific death. He was a very healthy 2-year-old dog. And after a necropsy was performed, it was found that poison was the culprit. We had been hiking on public Grant County land, and I can only put 2 and 2 together. Either Wildlife Services put out poison that killed my dog, or some other entity did. And that is the problem that I have with the contract at hand as well. The fact that it's a very opaque organization, their accountability, I mean, I didn't even know who to report the death of my dog to. I've read that between 2010 and 2017, 43 dogs have been killed in the state of New Mexico from Wildlife Services methods, but based on my personal experience, I have to assume that that's a very lowball number, and that the real figures are not reported simply because who do we report to? I don't know the name of a single employee that works for Wildlife Services, and I was born and raised in this area and like to think that I know who to go to when I need to address a problem. Besides which, if you're attempting to address the problems, if you deem it a problem, such as coyotes and predation on cattle in the area, there have been studies that have been verified since the 80s that show that the more coyotes that you kill in a given year, the following year's litters are larger to accommodate for it. So that you literally do not actually address the problem that you're purporting to address. I am 100% vehemently opposed to the continuance of this contract, and I would second the idea put forth by previous speakers who have proposed that before signing any such contract again in future, there needs to be a well-documented system put in place for accountability of the employees within that service. Thank you.
My name is Diane Mon. I moved to Silver City a little bit more than a year ago. And this is a very personal statement, but I'm asking you not to sign this contract. And I urge you to think about using local resources and perhaps federal, I don't know enough about the system, to deal with problem predators. There are 4 points that resonate with me personally. First, I've been hiking for 65 of my 75 years. It's my sport. It's what I do. Lately, I've hiked a little bit more with my dog, and I have to tell you that I'm afraid to go out there. I certainly don't want to be injured at this point. I want to be safe on public lands. Secondly, I care about a healthy ecosystem. We have been messing up things over the course of my lifetime repeatedly, and I really believe that the Wildlife Services does nothing to maintain a healthy system in the Gila and in Grant County. Other people have spoken about accountability, and I have to say I've been appalled to hear about the lack of accountability by Wildlife Services. I lived in Mountain Air for 15 years and believe that at that point they were far more accountable to the local people. I don't know what's happening here, but I feel like I need to demand of you that you ensure accountability to yourselves and to all of us. And finally, I really care about our tax dollars. We're not a wealthy county. I would encourage you to make sure you understand the difference between just signing a blanket contract for cruel and unusual punishment, if you will, and simple reimbursement for losses. I don't know what those numbers are. I hope that you do and that you will consider that when you vote on this. Thank you.
John Beaver again. I only used up 1 minute, so. Anyway, I know a lot of people in Grant County that would be willing, okay, number one, traps and poison are indiscriminate. They kill everything. People too. I know a lot of people in Grant County that would be willing to take care of predators in another manner, and they would do it for nothing. So I don't know why you're paying somebody to do this. Thank you.
Other public input?
Hi, my name is Catherine Schmidt, and I came here to talk about the trapping, but I just want to say about the hospital. I did work with the hospital for about 5 years. I think that the community is very upset about this from what I'm hearing, and it might be the time I think it's a good idea to see if taxpayers are willing to pay more money to keep the hospital. That might be a solution. I just want to say that. I know I would be. So as far as the trapping, I'm opposed to the indiscriminate trapping and poisoning of wildlife. I frequently hike with my 3 dogs, and it's a real fear I have, by myself, that I would be able to get them out of the trap. I feel that, it's a danger to, and it's ineffective. I think they've shown that it's an ineffective method of managing wildlife. It's not cost effective, and it's dangerous to the public, and it's inhumane. Excuse me. I believe that renewing this contract, which is ineffective, may benefit a small minority of the public, namely ranchers, and not the majority of the public. The money could be used to manage wildlife in a safer, more non-lethal, more humane way. There are many ranchers who are managing and protecting their livestock on public lands in a responsible manner that does not indiscriminately and barbarically kill wild animals. There's a lot of documentation of that. I know there's a lot of ranchers that are doing that. I believe this is a solution. I also think that, it's been proven that predators are important to the ecosystem, and I really think we need to stop the war on predators. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public input?
Hi, my name is Paul Slattery, and I live in Silver City. And I agree with everything that's been stated, especially seeing this, because I've been out and seen the destruction that some of the cattle do on our property where they shouldn't be. And I'm also, it was great to hear you acknowledge how great it was to hear all the fine detail in the financial parts of the hospital. We need this now here. And we've been doing it for 18 years. How about giving another way a chance? And seeing if anything has been happening. We might be just paying for airplane and helicopter joyrides. It's we don't even know what they've been doing, how they've been doing it, or if there's any results. Do nothing for 2 years. Maybe nothing will change. Good luck, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Further public input?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Melissa Amarillo. I'm a resident of District 4 in Grant County. And I'm also the co-founder of Advocates for Snake Preservation, and now local nonprofit. But I'm mainly here to speak on my personal behalf. This isn't necessarily a snake issue. A little bit, but mostly not. So I'm relatively new to this area. My partner and I relocated here about a year ago. And I think while the hospital and the presence of the hospital is important to a lot of people, I think many people, myself included, relocate to this area because of the beautiful abundance of public lands, especially the National Forest, the Gila and the Gila River. And that's why we came. And we actually were lucky enough to get someplace where the Gila National Forest is literally in our backyard. And I was appalled to learn recently that we have this contract with Wildlife Services, and which means indiscriminate placement of cyanide sodium bombs and traps basically right in my backyard. And I am here to ask you guys to please cancel this contract. I've got a bunch of nieces and nephews, dogs, and when my city slicker nieces and nephews come visit, I want to give them the opportunity to explore the forest and connect with nature in a way that they can't do at home. And I don't look forward to having to have a conversation with my sister or my brothers-in-law that their kids got injured from one of these indiscriminately placed bombs or traps, which is something that could very likely happen. It's happened in other places to kids. As someone who works with an unliked animal, I spend a lot of time talking to people, including children, about how you can avoid conflict with rattlesnakes. And you can teach kids how to be observant, watch what they're doing, and avoid those situations with wild animals. You can teach dogs how to avoid conflicts with snakes, but you can't teach people how to avoid these unmarked and unmapped traps because they are by nature hidden, and in the case of dogs, they're actually set in a way to attract other canines, and so they attract dogs too. So this is a real public safety risk that just has no place on our public lands, or really anywhere. I have a master's in biology and an undergraduate degree in wildlife management and conservation, so I'm pretty well versed on what the best and most recent science says on how to manage wildlife. I know you guys heard about some of that from Dr. Luke on Tuesday. And lethal wildlife management is ineffective, it's expensive, and it's not supported by the latest science. And it's really not something that we should be supporting with our tax dollars either. So again, I just want to reiterate, I really would like this contract canceled altogether. At the very least, I think that you should adopt the amendment as proposed by Commissioner Brown, or some of the proposed amendments that Carol Ann made earlier today during the public input. And in the spirit of putting up or shutting up, I know that one way that we can move towards alternative methods of coexisting with predators would be to form a working group, and I would be more than happy to volunteer to be a part of that group. So, thank you for your time.
My name is Candace Greenlee, and this go-around I've been in the Silver City area about 20 years. I didn't come here to speak today, but I feel that my voice needs to be heard. The hospital, when I first came here, any procedure, outpatient procedure, any tests or anything, I had to go to Las Cruces for. In the last 10 years or so, they've been happening here. I'm very happy with the service that I've been getting at the hospital. I would like to see it remain independent. On the whole wildlife issue, you could have knocked me over when I read that the county, my taxpayer dollars are going towards having Wildlife Services indiscriminately kill our natural resource. The system is so out of whack, the predators are being killed, the rabbits are overrunning areas of the county, and we need to keep things in balance. And I think you need to find a different way to, a non-lethal way and a less indiscriminate way to deal with any predator problems that we may have. I lived the previous 20 years up in Catron County and was appalled by the numbers. They got more information from their contracts, and I was appalled by the numbers of animals, target species and non-target species, that were being taken by Wildlife Services. Thank you.
Further public input?
I'm still Dustin Hammond, and I just wanted to say that I'm pretty sure if I went out on public lands and placed traps and poisoned, that would be considered illegal for me to just go out and place lethal items onto public land. And yet you're considering paying people to go and do that. Now, if I were to do that and a child was accidentally killed, I'd probably be in jail for murder. If that was to happen from one of these traps, that would make you all accomplices in my mind.
Thanks. Other questions?
Good morning. My name is Robert Gossman, and I own a home here in Silver City. I want to thank you all for being here and manning your post. I'd like to say that I respect the system and the process. I appreciate the process. And I admire your courage and resiliency to man this post. I would also like to say that I noted that we moved to this topic unprompted. The public moved to this topic unprompted. So I don't think it's a marginal topic. It's the crossroads between essential human progress and nature. And so it's important and it's big. And I believe the populist sentiment is growing constantly to meet this. So again, I appreciate your position because it does seem adversarial and it's emotional. Because every day, and at an exponential level, we wake up to how important it is to respect nature and to learn how to coexist in nature. So it's our duty to work together. We're all people in this room. We're all people in the process, which is why I have so much appreciation for the process. Kids love animals. And as our children's questions get better and better, this legacy is discovered. So, when we bring, when elders are at a loss to deal with troubled youth, which is a big issue these days, I noted that we bring them to nature to find fortitude and an innovative sense of patience to embrace the process. So again, I say thank you for manning your post. It's definitely a big job for all of us. And, going forward, I hope we all continue to honor the process. And thank you as liaisons to civility for representing this legacy. And I just also want to say, as a local homeowner, I would be happy to pay a little bit more in taxes for the hospital. Sounds good to me.
My name is Lee Jenkins, and I live in District 3 of Grant County. And I really don't have anything new to add, but I do want to make my voice heard that I oppose this contract with Wildlife Services. I have a very curious 7-month-old puppy who frequently takes me for a walk, and her strongest sense is her smell, and she would be very attracted to some of these poisonous bombs that are potential risk for her health and mine. So I ask that you all please consider not renewing the contract with Wildlife Services. And thank you for allowing us to have this time to comment.
Thank you.
I'm Kelvin Garland again. I didn't come to speak on Wildlife and the Wilderness Act, but having heard, I want to put my word in. I totally agree that it is totally poor business practices just to give money out without an accountability. I agree with the person who said if we're going to give them money, we should not do it this year. We should have them give an accounting of the expenses they have done on Grant County money for the last X number of years, and then assess whether more would be given. I want to build on what Josiah said about nature and the connection. We need to remember that we are the invaders. We are the invaders starting 600-700 years ago. My ancestors started 500 years ago. Mother Nature has a balance and harmony that's set up that we are grossly disrupting, and we are infamous for doing so. If you look at the research that was done on the wolves and destroying them in Yellowstone National Park, and what happened and the return of the wolves and how the ecology balanced again, what we are doing is we are again throwing it out of balance for all of us. We're not the only species here. We are living on deer land, we're living on coyote land, we're living on Mexican wolf land, we're living on the black bear land, we're living on the puma or mountain land, and we need to learn how to live in harmony with them. And I would really encourage you not to renew this contract, to look at setting together a community group like the woman said she would be willing to be a part of. I would too, but I don't have the knowledge in the area that many other people here do. But I think that we have to take a responsible place if we're going to bring order to our environment and live in a peaceable environment. There was a saying that I read one time that said, with responsible attitude, I accept my place in time and existence. And in so doing, I bring peace to my inner world and order to my outer. And I think we need to apply this to our relationship, to our environment, to all species, and as well as how we relate. So I would encourage you to adopt Harry's amendment, and maybe even do some tweaking of it. I haven't read it, I'll be honest, but I'm hearing good things about it. And look at what else can be done, but do not give these people money indiscriminately that they have no accountability for. Look what happened after 2008 when those hundreds of millions of dollars were given to the banks and there was no accountability on what they did. And it did not help the environment. It did not help our businesses. It did not help the people who lost their homes or anything. Let's not do that to our environment and to our society and to the tourists that come in. I'm afraid I can't do hiking anymore as a result of my injuries, but I would really be wary to do it and take a dog out into the wilderness with what I've been hearing today. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chris Mueller, I'm a resident out in Gila. I imagine for the past 18 years this has been rubber stamped through. There's a lot of history in the country to protect ranchers. I don't know how they still have such a powerful lobby, but they do all across the country. There's places where they spend millions of dollars a year needlessly killing wildlife to protect cattle which are not at risk. I'm really grateful that some people came down to bring awareness to this issue for us, so that I imagine you guys have learned more about this issue in the past week than council members have in the past 18 years. So I appreciate you taking a look at this issue, maybe for the first time, instead of just having it pass on. I've lived and worked out in the wilderness for more than 15 years of my life, and that's full-time living out there. Worked with kids in wilderness therapy, and as a part of that, my dog has been trapped in a leg trap, and the students saw that happen. And they've also seen wild animals like bobcats trapped in leg traps. This is a business I'm hoping to bring down to help people down in this area in Grant County that can't afford the help because these programs are expensive. The trauma that happened to these young people when they saw these animals trapped was intense. Imagine none of you in a leg trap would want to be there. animals chew their legs off to get out of them. It's not a humane thing to do. They can't just open them up. Like, it's difficult. When I had to let my dog out of the trap, he was sick for a couple of days from the poison, but thankfully he survived. The pain it inflicts on animals is ridiculous. Another aspect is wildlife services. That's a horrible name. We do not serve the wildlife by doing this. We actually are hurting wildlife. If we were serving the wildlife, we would actually work to take the cattle out of the wilderness area, which would allow the habitat and the animals who live there naturally to be able to thrive. That would bring in all kinds of new opportunities and help the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Yes.
I just want to thank you all, Chairman and Commissioners. I want to echo what people have said. You guys don't have an easy job, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen and to reflect and represent the interests of the whole county on many big decisions. My name is Alicia Shaw, and I'm an organizer with Wild Earth Guardians, and I just came up here to share these with you. I know you've been hearing from a number of constituents on these issues. We also did an Action Network letter campaign, and I'm not sure that they actually got to your inboxes, so we printed out the letters. We printed out most of them yesterday afternoon, but we have collected about 42 of them altogether. So we shall actually bring this up tonight. I just want to reiterate what folks have said. I really hope you all, consider not renewing this contract until there has been a lot more review. I think the idea of a working group with a lot of different stakeholders at the table is actually a really great way of looking at these issues in deeper, in more depth. But if you do decide to vote on the contract, I do hope that you adopt the amendments that would ban the use of the indiscriminate tools, the traps, the poisons, the things that people are scared of, the things that could potentially hurt kids and dogs, that kill many of non-target species. I hope that you amend the contract if you do pass it to not include those uses on public lands, to prioritize non-lethal, more cost-effective, more efficient management, and to deeply account for the money and the uses of the money and what people are doing. And I thank you again for your time and your consideration.
Any further public comment, input? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Robert Fischoff, and I live in Silver City. And thank you for the opportunity, Chairman Billings and Commissioners. When I found out about this contract, I started talking to my friends in the farming and ranching community here in Grant County. And what I found, and this isn't definitive, is that the smaller farmers and raisers of stock and small ranchers don't make use of the service. They don't even think very much of it altogether. And it may very well be that only the largest ranchers are taking advantage of this contract. And if that is true, I don't see the point of us using our tax dollars to subsidize the wealthiest ranchers in the county. And it doesn't really make very much sense to do something that most of us are opposed to for the benefit of a very, very small number of people. And I think that's a really important question that you need to consider is who benefits? What's the advantage of this contract altogether? So I would ask that you consider that and register my opposition to seeing this renewed. And I'd also point out something else I think that's incredibly important, and that is for reasons that are unclear, we, humans, have been asked to take care of this planet. And we're not doing a very good job. And if there was a way of grading us, I don't think there are enough letters in the Roman alphabet to give us a grade, maybe a double Z. So on a very local scale, we can consider that and say, what is the best thing we can do, the best possible thing we can do for taking care of our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further public input? Is there any further public input? Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to proceed with the agenda and go into executive session?
Chairman? I was just going to say, I move into executive session in accordance with NRSA 1978-10-15-1H for discussion of disposal of Grant County property, including the Regional Medical Center, NMSA, 1978, 1015-1.
Second. Has been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brown, are you aware that you will be entering executive session?
Yes, I am.
Commissioner Ramos, are you aware that you will be entering executive
Yes, I
session? Commissioner Edwards, are you aware that you will be entering executive session? Chairman Billings, are you aware that you will be entering executive session?
Yes.
Commissioner Capson, are you aware that you will be entering executive session?
I am.
We're in executive session. We'll be back. We'll be back. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we come back into regular session from executive session.
Second. As a result of,
Yeah, let's vote.
Come back in.
okay, all in favor? Aye. As a result of executive session, no action was taken, and only the items that we went into executive session for were discussed.
But there is action necessary. There is action necessary. So,
Yes, there is action necessary as a result of our executive session. We're getting right to that, sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move to continue the delivery of health care at the Gila Regional Medical Center as a county-owned hospital.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
You keep talking now? That's what this is for. Oh, I go first? You're on that end.
Anyone who'd like to?
All right, you're fine. Going first.
I've spent a long time in Grant County fighting wishful thinking. I've fought wishful thinking when it came to Phelps Dodge and groundwater. Fought wishful thinking when it came to the Gila diversion and whether there'd be an economical use for that water. I fought wishful thinking. I'm currently fighting it now with Harlem Air Force Base, who insists there won't be any fires in our forest as a result of overflights. And I'm very worried that we are engaged in wishful thinking right now. We put a lot of eggs in a basket that I respect very much, whose name is Richard Stokes. He's only human. We put a bunch more eggs in improved reimbursements from critical care facility status. But that's only political. Don't know how long that will last. As has been mentioned, more than 120 rural hospitals have gone out of business since 2005. Maybe 700 or so rural hospitals have dramatically cut services. This trend has been accelerating since 2010, according to research that most of us have probably read. Disproportionately affected in this trend have been critical access hospitals, facilities that provide essential services in isolated communities. Most shut down amid financial woes tied to upkeep costs for things like leaking roofs, antiquated power supplies, and aging clinical equipment. That should sound familiar. Contributing factors included insufficient patient populations, high rates of uninsured patients, dwindling cash flow, and physician shortages. Those features also should sound familiar to anyone paying attention. Hospitals at high risk for financial trouble often serve those who are unemployed, lack transportation, or suffer from mobility limitations, as does our hospital. Closure of a hospital for that population is truly devastating. It is not often that a community like ours, or even a richer community, turns down tens of millions of dollars in cash plus future contractually committed investment in order to stay with an overworked and, although dedicated, underqualified board that directs an institution that is heavily disadvantaged by lack of scale in the marketplace. And yet that's exactly what we're doing, at least for the time being. Goodness help us. We will need it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, residents of Grant County, I'd like to thank you all for all the calls, emails, letters to the editor, and face-to-face comments that were brought to all of us. I would also like to take this time to ask the public to stop bashing any of the individual commissioners on this board. They put a lot of hard effort into this decision and worked very hard in countless numerous hours. The decision we made to enter into an RFP process to explore the different possibilities for GRMC was a decision we all made as a commission, not as individuals. We as commissioners knew this would not be the popular way to go. As a commission, we thought we needed to react due to losing over $22 million at that time. As people got angry, we were blamed for many things during this venture, but there are things as governing body could not let out during an RFP process, as we learned during the Cancer Center ordeal. All we ever wanted to do was to make sure the future of our hospital was stable and give the residents the best medical care possible. I would like to thank my fellow commissioners for all their hard work, time, and effort put into this decision and process. This was a long, lengthy process, but this is what happens when you have to make such a big, important decision. Not only did we consider our fellow residents, constituents, and employees of GRMC, but we each have family that might need to be hospitalized one of these days. Who knows what the future holds for all of us. We would also like to thank the Board of Trustees for volunteering and serving on the board, and I wish you the best on every decision you make here and forward. I pray that we made the right decision, and I ask that you create accountability measures for our hospital administration. We are counting on you to keep our commission informed through a newly formed critical thinking group that can meet every month and ask all the important questions. We are asking that the board and the commission meet in some sort of manner to keep each other informed at least once or twice a year as a complete commission and a complete board. I think that is very important. The decision we made today is one of the hardest decisions I have had to make in the last 20 years of my public service, my political service. Today we think we made the right decision. Did we? The future will tell. The future will tell. I'm asking all of you who commented and spoke out loudly to put your money where your mouth and pen are. Whenever that tax question comes out, we need your support, because supporting that tax question is supporting our hospital. And that's the only way we're going to be able to get out of any kind of future messes in GRMC. Let us all do our part to keep our hospital moving forward. And this, I challenge the public, please, whenever that tax question does come out, help Gila Regional, help yourselves, help the county. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? So I would also like to thank everybody in the public who has engaged in dialogue over the last year, especially in the last few weeks, all the people who called and wrote and emailed. I appreciate the opportunity to have back and forth dialogue about an issue that is extremely important to this community. Under a tremendous amount of pressure from the public demanding that we do something about the hospital, the Commission did the only thing it could do, which was initiate a process to evaluate the financial condition of the hospital, present and future market risks, and any potential partnership options available. It has not been a pretty process. That said, this Commission, the county manager, the county attorney, and county staff worked really, really hard to ensure that we had the most comprehensive, objective risk assessment possible under very challenging circumstances. There is a lot to say about how we ended up here today, but what matters most is that today's decision is not the end of the process, but the beginning. Remaining independent in today's market will be an extreme challenge that every single person in this community will have to get behind. That means that no one gets to say no when asked to serve on a committee, fill out a survey, attend a meeting, provide input, donate to the foundation. You don't get to cry foul when consolidation and outsourcing is the only way to control costs and causes layoffs. If the healthcare service you need is available here, you don't get to choose to have that service somewhere else. You have to choose to have it here and support Gila Regional Medical Center. It also means that we have to consistently demand accountability and transparency from hospital management. You, the public, have spoken about your desire to have a community-owned hospital. That means that when you are asked to vote yes to raise taxes to support our hospital, you must vote yes on that tax question. I would also ask that in the next 12 months, the community step up to the plate by offering the county the solution of creating a special hospital district. It has to be community organized and community asked for. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking of the word I want there. It has to come from the community. I would like very much to see that. The creation of the Hospital Funding Act, the Board of Trustees, the relationship between the Board of Commissioners and the New Mexico Open Meetings Act makes for a very unpleasant and uncomfortable relationship between the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Trustees. That isn't human fault, it's legislative fault. We need to undo that while maintaining our independence of the hospital if that's what the community wants. A special hospital district or 501c3 are the only two routes to take in order to make that happen. We have a monumental task in front of us. We must rise up to that challenge together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike? Go ahead. All right. So, Gila Regional has a lot of challenges left in front of it. A year ago, I wouldn't have bet a nickel it would survive. I thought that it was circling the drain and it was the water was going out fast. So that being said, kudos to the Board of Trustees, to Taffy, Richard, staff. You guys have made a believer in me that you at least can get to this level. You still have a lot of challenges, an unbelievable amount. I didn't say unsurmountable, I said unbelievable. There's a lot of challenges. You know, one of the most vocal groups in this whole process was the doctors. And I'm going to chastise them just a little bit. They were 100% for staying local. For a very numerous amount of reasons. But you know what? If you want your hospital, quit just using it for what is easy for you to use it for and sending everybody else out of town. We can do our tests here. We need a higher usage rate at our very own hospital. Quit sending people out of town for stuff that we can do here. If you're doing that, you're just a parasite. This decision in no way changes the reality that GRMC is still the only county-owned hospital in the state. I too, with Alicia, and we didn't discuss this prior to, actually Harry and I did. I want to ask the trustees to work with the commission and the public on continued discussion on whether or not this is the best governance situation that's available to us. And I hope that the public will consider a hospital district or a 501c3. I think a hospital district probably is a little better. The Board of Trustees will then be elected by the public, and that's how they'll be held accountable, because the New Mexico Hospital Funding Act has no accountability for trustees other than themselves. Thank you guys for coming today. Thank you for all of your comments. I got to tell you, the Keep the Hospital was not 100%. There's a lot of people out there that were very vocal the other way too. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thanks. I just want to say that, to echo the sentiment that time will tell if we made the right decision. I squirmed when one of the speakers in public input quoted my comments as written in the paper, because time will tell if those turn out to be true or not. We are putting a lot of confidence in an administration who seems to be turning things around financially. I did want to also point out that the challenges that we've been questioning at Gila Regional are financial and not operational. And I think sometimes the public hears problems at Gila Regional and they don't realize that we're talking about financial problems, not level of service, safety, or care that you get there. So I hope that everyone will keep that in mind. I look forward to improved relationship that's already started with the Board of Trustees going forward. And I'd also be remiss if I got a petition from physicians. I think there's 31. We've already heard from a lot of these and a lot more. There's some new ones on this petition this morning asking that they're expressing their 100% support of GRFC continuing as county-owned. And I'm going to keep this copy or make a list of it so I can call on some of these physicians for help in the future going forward. So there are, that's my comments.
Call for the question.
Shall we have a roll call vote? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ross? Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now you want to ask Mike to stop?
At this time, if it please the board, I'd like to offer an opportunity for either of the three trustees that are here, any of the three trustees to come forward and make a statement. I think there's only three here. Oh, four. Sorry. Thank you.
Still morning. Good morning, commissioners and staff.
Morning.
You know, what I really want to express my initial appreciation for is a tremendous amount of hard work and diligence that you did, and bravery. You know, this was not a coward's approach, and I can truly appreciate that coming from my positions in government. So I do applaud you for doing what you've done. The whole process, working towards making sure that Grant County has good, sustainable, viable health care. The next part that I would like to express some appreciation for is a tremendous amount of education that's happened over the last 2 years. I'm finished up my second year as a trustee. Had experience in healthcare. I've dealt with a number of small clinics, small hospitals on various levels, mostly from the accounting side. But nothing could have given me the education that I've had in the last 2 years. And the pace of that education this last year, due to this process, is tremendous. The amount of reading, the amount of literature, the amount of debate, discussion, and discourse that has evolved over this year, I think is going to make myself and hopefully the trustees, and really hopefully our administration, much better, much more efficient. I do trust and believe the comments on our challenges. Our challenges are, we've learned of a number of challenges. And we know that there's challenges that have not even been said, that we don't even know yet. This is a battle. One of the things the commissioner, or the trustees have made points of over this last year, that if this vote does go our way, the work begins. This is going to be a tremendous effort on our part. And, you know, going back to some of the past issues, mainly the communication issues, the transparency issues, we have to move forward with this process, changing that culture altogether. We do have built-in hurdles with the Hospital Funding Act, as in the way that we operate, that in many cases has either been used to embolden parties to not communicate, or has just been used as a simple excuse not to communicate. What we need to do is we need to make sure that that culture, that even working within that act, if that is the way that we should move forward in, that we create a culture that navigates through that act and allows for much greater transparency, much greater communication, as some of the points that Commissioner Ramos mentioned. And along with, you know, as part of that education and part of that exploration, going forward, we need to ensure that not just this Board of Trustees functions at a high level, not that just this administrative team functions at a high level, but that everything is put into place so that the future trustees and future administrations work at a very high level and making this viable. And we do need to explore other alternatives. If there becomes some sort of a task force or a publicly driven task force to look at a special hospital district, I think we definitely need to play a part in that with our communications and knowledge source and get a good feel for that dynamic. I think the commission needs to be part of that as well, and just allow that to, if that is a choice that the public wants to do, that is a successful choice and that works and becomes an effective model if that is something. We also need to continue to look at other models, whether it's a 501c3 model, because what's more important than just this group of trustees and this current administration operating good for the next 3-4 years is we definitely need to ensure that this community has great care going into the future. And finally, I appreciate the decision. I appreciate the opportunity to work my tail off because I know that that's what it's going to take, and hopefully we continue to work towards earning your trust, work towards earning the public's trust, so that if tax issues do come in front of them, not only are they feeling obligated just to keep their identity in place, but they actually feel good about it. That's very important to me. I don't want to hold taxpayers hostage by any stretch. We need to work hard and make them feel good if that is the decision direction they want to go. And I'll turn it over to some of my other trustees. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Tony Trujillo, lifelong resident of Grant County and one of the trustees. I'm not going to repeat what our chairman, Mike Morones, had to say here. I'll only add that, you know, it put everything in perspective. I just want to thank you for your due diligence that you did. You know, you had no choice but to do what you did. And we, as trustees, learned a lot from what we had to do in regards to moving the ball forward that you asked us to do. And so I thank you for the decision, because I think it's the right decision. You know, I'll tell you, and you've heard me say this before, I'll put up our physicians, our quality of physicians, our caregivers, our administration against anybody, anywhere. We don't win those awards easily that we've won over and over again just by being a county-owned hospital. We do it because of the quality of patient care that those individuals do day in and day out, and we appreciate that. On top of that, the community support for this past period has been tremendous. I tell you, this county
owned hospital. It is a community hospital, and we're proud to keep it that way, and you bet the commitment that our chair has said, our work is cut out for us, all of us in this room is there, and we're certainly going to do that. Thank you for the opportunity to show you that we made the right decision, all of us made the right decision here, and thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thanks.
Jeannie Miller, shortest person on the board. Board of Trustees and Commissioners, thank you very much for your vote. I've been on the board now of trustees now just a year, and it's been an incredible 12 months. What I would say to you is this, because everything else has pretty much been said, is that we, as a board, said when we went into this, are we ready, if we stay as a county-owned hospital, are we ready to put our chin to the road? We all said yes. And in answer to Commissioner Brown's comments that we are inexperienced and so on and so forth, yes, we are, because we are appointed from the community. One of the things that I hope that we will do, and I certainly know I am going to do, and by virtue of the fact that I'm now on 3 committees for the Board of Trustees, is look at how we as trustees can become more educated in the ways of the hospital. Also, we know that there is turmoil in the whole medical, the way that things are going in healthcare in the country. And I will say that what I have found really, really helpful, and I praise our new administration, is that they are there to teach us and to help us understand how this works. And they don't shy away from questions. They don't say we can't help you with that. And they are open to when we ask those questions and when we criticize. So I think that we are thankful that we have been given a chance to go forward. It has never been our intent that we might only stay in this configuration. We just need to get our feet on the ground and start working, and then start looking at the other alternatives if indeed they are necessary. So thank you again for your vote. We are ready to hit the ground running, and we start today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Wilmot, thank you for voting me into the Board of Trustees. I have not attended a meeting yet, so I am looking forward to my first meeting at the end of next week. First of all, I think I've heard a lot of credit given to Taffy and Richard, and I do believe from the short time I've had to review what's been going on, they have done an enormous job in this last year, and so super credit goes to them. But I just want to emphasize to you that it took courage to do what you did and to really look hard at options for this community. It was important, and regardless of whether or not you chose a private company or not, the fact that you kept us independent, there was a lot of good that came from what you did, an awful lot of good. So from my perspective on the outside, I can say thank you, and you really caused a great deal of thinking in the community and change as well. I think everybody is much more aware because of your efforts, and thank you for that. Now, as far as Commissioner Brown's comments about qualifications, we'll prove to you that we're up to the job. I mean, clearly, I don't think this board has the hospital experience, but I think there's an experience base that knows how to hold people accountable. Accountability is the key. That was lost years ago. And I think that with this new energizing of the committee and the board, as well as wanting to have the communication that we haven't had over this last 2 or 3 years, that we're going to be successful. I really do believe that, and it's going to take a lot of hard work, but I believe we can really be proud of we should be proud of the past, but we need to be exceptionally proud of the opportunities we have for the future, and we'll get there. I do feel very comfortable about that. So, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for
Please, the board, Kathy, Arias, would you like to say anything? Sure, Richard, thanks.
Richard is the one that has the many words, so I'm very short on this. I have felt since the moment that I even interviewed for this position that there is a special feeling, a special ambiance, and special spirituality that exists in this county and in this city. It is an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, like Ms. Taffy said, you know, when I first, I've been here about 5 months now, and it took me about 3 hours to realize the significant opportunities available that we have at Gila Regional. So again, like other speakers have said, I want to thank the commissioners for your efforts. It was something you needed to do. Now it's our job to move Gila Regional to the next level, and we are on that road. It won't be easy. It won't be every day. It won't be a great day. We'll have successes and we'll have failures. But I think our strength lies in the team that Ms. Taffy has built at the hospital. We have some outstanding, excellent employees to help guide the organization to the next level. And as far as the board, if I may comment on our board for just 1 second, this is the 5th hospital I've worked at. This board is the most engaged board that I have ever worked with. And when I mean engaged in a meaningful way. You know, they ask some really hard questions, and part of my job, as I've indicated in the past, is to be a source of information for our board. And whether I'm here or someone else follows behind me one day, my job is to create the framework that the board can then judge current activity by. And that's what we'll be working on, and we have been working on. So again, thank you for the opportunity to keep Gila Regional special and local.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's approve some minutes.
Mr. Chair? I'd like to propose, actually, that instead of going on to minutes, we accord the same respect to the folks who are here about wildlife services contract that we did for the hospital, and that we move item K under section 9 on agreements to the next agenda item so that we can allow them to get to their lives as well.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Appreciate that.
Agenda item K, approve or disapprove agreement A-18-16, work and financial plan between Grant County and the United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services.
You got that motion?
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we approve agreement number A-18-16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
In that case, I would like to offer an amendment from my...
You want to do them one at a time, or do you want to do them all together?
Actually, one at a time to have some logic to it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you agree with that. If you have these available to you, I'd like to start with the amendment to section 5, which is the cost estimate for services.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I'm desperately trying to find it.
Yep, take your time. I know I changed the agenda. I should have thought of it before, but frankly, I was surprised by how many people were here for this issue, so I hadn't thought about it.
So we're getting copies made, so we'll have these amendments in front of us.
Electronically?
Not your,
I sent them out.
I had them on my email, but I didn't have any.
You can get your email here.
I printed mine up, so I have it.
Oh, I've got my email open, that's why I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay.
Well, not all of us are capable of
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Since this is a public meeting, you might not have heard that discussion. We're getting a chastisement from Commissioner Brown on our technical skills.
The motion was to approve the contract.
We have a motion and a second, and now we're considering amendments. I think so. I don't know what she said, but I assume that's what she said.
Yes, that's for sure.
If I keep them all, I'll be the only one debating.
As you distribute the copies, there are 4 proposed amendments. And I'd like to, well, maybe Marissa wants one. I'd like to start with the third, actually. I think I'm moving in order of least controversial to most. It's in section 4, and it's the second of those 2 amendments. And it states, in order to maintain good standing with Grant County and to be considered for contract renewal, Wildlife Services shall provide timely quarterly reports on their activities and use of funds to the cooperator. And of course, the cooperator is us, Grant County, and that language would replace the phrase, be kept advised. The cooperator formally said the cooperator will be kept advised on the status of this project on a regular basis, which is the language we've lived with for many years.
So where's the kept advised?
It's crossed out.
It's been struck through on the
I don't have
version.
one that's struck out.
Really? We're on 4, on the front page.
Oh, excuse me, I went to Roman numeral 4.
There's a fair amount of confusion in this one as well.
Apologize for not specifying, is that a Hindu Arabic?
So we're under item Roman numeral 2, 4, right at the bottom of the first page.
So when an amendment is proposed like this, do you make a motion, vote on the amendment?
Yes, we would vote on each amendment individually and then vote on the motion however it ends up being amended,
Okay,
if at all.
all right. So I'll make a motion that we, and there's no number here. We add this.
I apologize that there's no number.
I'll make a motion that we add this first amendment.
So if it pleases the chair, I would ask a question of the county manager, because the only question I have is annually or quarterly. So on purpose, Mary Alice. So, my only question, I would like to ask the county manager on whether or not she feels as though quarterly or annually is sufficient. Is that okay? Sure. So,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Captain, I believe that quarterly is something that they can provide. My experience with a similar contract in other districts in the state, I did receive quarterly reports. I had very good conversation with 2 employees who were at your meeting on Tuesday that have assured me they can provide the documentation that we are looking for.
Okay, so is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the first proposed amendment, so we're going to vote on these one at a time, is that
That makes sense to me.
Okay. Is there any discussion to the amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I would like to proceed then with the fourth of the amendments, which is under Roman numeral 5, and which is partner, really, it's enforcement for the one we just approved. And it's in addition to the contract that reads, APHIS WS, which is Wildlife Services, will not bill the cooperator for any quarter services without having also provided the cooperator with corresponding quarterly reports. Those quarterly reports shall detail wildlife services activities, parentheses, species caught, relocated or killed, number of animals killed and by which method and manner, number of confirmed depredation events, and livestock and property losses, in parentheses, and itemizing its use of funds before the county will make payments related to this contract. From my perspective, this describes what we expect, and it describes the enforcement of our expectations.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, Commissioner Brown, are you assured that they can give you this type of detail?
I would like to know if County Manager Webb brought that up with those employees.
I didn't have this in front of me when I met with them over a week ago. I'm not sure that they can provide you the exact detail of some of these items that you're asking for. I know that there's a more detailed report and better statistics that we can get out of them from my personal experience, but I would be a little hesitant to... I guess my question is, are you going to not fund them if they provide 90% of those statistics?
So
or
in the two reports that I've seen, which have been annual reports, they have listed all except method and manner.
Correct.
So we're really just talking about method and manner that we're not sure we can... For me, our discussion on Tuesday had a lot to do with cost-effective methods, and I don't know how to evaluate that if we don't know what methods they're using.
all we can do is request it. Like I told you, I have a different experience with this district than I have in others. I was assured that whatever we were looking for, they would make their very best efforts to get that information to me.
Okay, well, my motion would be that we accept this amendment and that we understand Wildlife Services might come back to us and say they can't do this, in which case we can consider then what position we're in.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman, can we call this the second amendment?
I would like to call this the second amendment, because then everybody is going to support it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
So I still have an issue with not funding them if they can't. So if you could add at the end, if available. This is a discussion between commissioners. So if you guys want a sporting event, they have those on the other side of town. If you want to sit here and listen to us, let us talk.
Mr. Commissioner, I appreciate your suggestion. I wonder if you'd be amenable, since they've provided everything else, if we could insert instead language and unless infeasible, comma, between the word and by which method and manner used. So that it's only that piece that we're saying has to be feasible or not. And of course, if they say it's infeasible, I will certainly follow up and try to find out why. They should know what they're doing. I would not expect them to think that's infeasible.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rob, or Commissioner Rob, could you repeat where you want to add that? I don't understand.
Sure. As I have it printed out, it's the fourth line of the amended language. And it follows number of animals killed and, comma, unless infeasible, comma, by which method and manner used. I certainly don't want to let them off the hook for anything else.
Because you know they already provide that.
Annually they do. I expect they can provide it quarterly.
So your amendment will read, these quarterly reports shall detail Wildlife Services activities, species caught, relocated, or killed, number of animals killed where feasible. Is that correct?
Number of animals killed and, comma. No, they can provide number of animals killed. They do.
Okay, sorry.
Number of animals killed and, comma, unless infeasible, comma, by which method and manner used.
Is everyone square on that? Is everyone square on that? Okay, it's been has there been a second on the amendment? Yes, there was. Okay.
The second amendment has been seconded.
Any further discussion on that amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. The other two amendments, the first and the second, as they appear, which are the third and the fourth that we're considering, are so closely related that I don't think we should consider them separately. It would be silly. If you don't mind, I'll read through so the audience is aware of what we're voting on.
Sure, thanks.
In Roman numeral 2, Hindu-Arabic Roman numeral 3, safely and professionally utilize approved wildlife damage management tools and equipment. That was in the original contract. And now the new language, comma, prioritizing non-lethal methods. At least 2 types of non-lethal methods must be implemented before lethal control is considered. And then the amendment goes on to specify that a number of kinds of lethal control cannot be used. Wildlife Services will not use the following methods: foothold, body gripping, or any other lethal traps, snaring devices, toxicants including sodium cyanide and compound 1080, calling and shooting, denning, or aerial control in their activities on public lands in Grant County. And the second half that goes very closely with that is in our normal numeral 4 under Roman 2, paragraph B. Direct control activities will implement at least 2 non-lethal methods before lethal control is considered. Direct control activities may not include the following methods: foothold, body gripping, or any other lethal traps, snaring devices, toxicants including sodium cyanide and compound 1080, calling and shooting, denning, or aerial control in their activities on public lands in Grant County. Thank you. And I make the motion that we accept those amendments. I keep forgetting to say that.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Okay, discussion on those 2 amendments. Yeah, so I guess I can start out. As far as the non-lethal methods, my experience with Wildlife Services is different than those expressed by public comment today. And in that, the word indiscriminate was used a lot. I have a picture on my phone just sent to me yesterday, actually sent to my wife by a neighbor. Of a pretty large bear in their tree right by the house. Wildlife Services wasn't called to do anything about this bear. If they would have been called, this bear wouldn't have been shot or killed. There's not mass indiscriminate killing of wildlife. I mean, this bear, it's a magnificent creature. And he was gone this morning. He left sometime during the night. He was treated because he was scared of the dog. He wasn't a risk to the community. Our neighbors recognized that. Wildlife Services would have recognized that. The first to be called would actually be the New Mexico Game and Fish Department, who would then engage Wildlife Services. And so for people who aren't familiar with this or this process or who have been misled, then it just seems like there's a bunch of crazy pilots out there just killing and shooting and trapping every animal that's availably killed in the county, and I certainly wouldn't support that. There are instances where there are animals who are threats to public safety or to property that are discriminately killed. And somebody brought up that ranchers can take care of their own animal control. And I would tell you that would be, in my opinion, would be much worse if you had vigilantes taking care of that, because they'll kill every bear, every lion, instead of having a professional state trapper, which I know Brandon Jones. I've actually been hunting with him years ago. He knows what he's doing. He has an ability to pick out the predator animals. He doesn't just go in and kill coyotes. He only kills coyotes when they're killing, and he only kills he's discriminate, and not indiscriminate. A lot was brought up about taxpayer dollars, and I just want to be clear that while dollars are used, these dollars come from, and it could be argued that definitely they are taxpayer dollars, because any time money goes into the treasury and comes out, that's money that's available for other purposes. But this money comes from the Taylor Grazing Act, which is money paid on BLM leases. It's my understanding that the county doesn't put county taxpayer dollars other than those, except on some occasions we have, I guess. Is that, last year did we?
No.
Right.
No, sir.
Okay. So that comes from grazing leases paid on BLM lands. Let's see, there's a lot of services provided, such as, we had an excellent presentation at our work session on Tuesday by Wildlife Services. The state director came down and talked about some of the services that they provide, including protecting our airport from things that could get in the way and cause a public safety problem there. They deal with pigeons and squirrels and other things. I don't know what else to say. So to the amendments, there's been some alternative forms. Where is that? Which was called, I want to get my word right, flagging? No, what'd you call that? Flaggery. Yeah. What's that? Flaggery?
Flattery with the D.
Flattery.
Like
Okay.
flattery with the D.
Okay, whatever it's called, it's hanging flags on a fence. And if that worked as a barrier, you would trap just as many predators inside the premises as outside the premises. But it won't work. It's foolish to think that it'll work. Coyote would go by that, maybe take a sniff and go right on through the fence. Flags might keep birds off of your porch. They won't keep coyotes off of the premises. And the other alternative method as far as range riders goes, when you have, let's say there was a 100-head cattle operation, that would, you would normally run about 1 head per 64 acres. So if you had 100 head, that's 6,400 acres of land that you'd have to look at 24 hours a day. You'd have to hire dozens, if not hundreds, of range riders, which would be ineffective without a gun. And that's what you'll have if you don't have Wildlife Services, is more mass killing of animals. And I'm sure, I can see that you're skeptical about my comments just as I was skeptical about yours, but I don't question your integrity or your sincerity. I believe that you actually think these things might work. I'm here to say that they won't, and I can't support those two amendments because those processes are ineffective. They would tie Wildlife Services' hands to provide the very useful function that they do, and that is eliminating, I don't want to say bad actor animals, but animals that are destructive and are a threat to safety. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to say, and that is there's been a big, we've lumped trapping in with what Wildlife Services does. And I think they're getting blamed for a lot of trapping that they have nothing to do with. I question some of the trapping practices by individuals, but that has nothing to do with this. Wildlife Services are professionals, and I think I understood them to say they didn't use the M80 thing last year. Is that right?
I think they said that they didn't use them in the Gila forest.
That's exactly right. The M44s we're talking about.
Okay.
And they didn't address the 1080, which I believe is strychnine.
Okay.
Yeah, they said they don't use that in the Gila forest, but I think they left open BLM.
Okay. Well, that's my comments. Further comments?
Nope.
We have a motion and a second for the third and fourth agenda on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
No. Motion fails for those in favor.
Move to the question on the agreement.
To the original.
Unless anybody else has further amendments.
Oh, yeah, back to the question on the agreement. Thank you, Mr. Caston. All those in favor of approving the agreement as amended?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, we're on to Roman numeral agenda item 6, the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for June 12th work session regular meeting minutes, June 28th special meeting minutes, July 10th special meeting minutes, and pursuant to NMSA 10-15-1J, the minutes of the present open meeting for the following special meeting, June 7th, 2018 GRMC executive meeting, and July 10th.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Financial reports.
Well, you gotta read that number D. Yes, that's what Alicia just read.
Alicia just read it.
The motion,
Yeah.
it normally isn't part of the motion itself, it's approving. But now we've all approved it, that's true. So
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for reading that.
All right, financial reports.
Financial reports, thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just gave you a promotion. It's been a long day. Is it morning still? No. I move to approve the July 13th, 2018 expenditure report.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item G. Approve or disapprove the Mexico County's voluntary employee.
Let's do that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's skip it.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to wait another couple hours? This is a letter of support to approve or disapprove for the Village of Santa Clara to annex the old Fort Baird Hospital tract. Mayor Bouch. Sorry, I think your name is pronounced Bouch. Correction, sorry. And if you need Miss Hudman, she's welcome to come.
Yeah, the village clerk. Sheila Hudman. No.
Is it up? Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
So we have with us Mayor Bouch, Mayor of Santa Clara, and Sheila Hudman, Town Clerk of Santa Clara.
Yes. We're requesting a letter of support for the annexation of Fort Baird, and hope the commission will, agree that it would be an important thing to do for us. There's a number of reasons why we would like to do that. I think you have a copy of the things. Most of it is spelled out there, a few bullet points, but it would help us greatly to facilitate the water line going from Fort Baird to the Fort Baird Medical Center. It would also help us with a lot of grant opportunities that we don't have right now. Also help us with the grants that we are working with. Would be better to be able to do these things within the city limits. A couple other things that we do, security and policing would be enhanced if we could annex. And the thing is that we're a certified local government, I should say, and which can designate historic buildings or landmarks and things, and because of this, we can pass along a lot of tax credits and breaks to various residents in the village because of enhancement of historic structures. And Fort Baird is a great part of the reason why we're part of the certified local government. So by having it within the city limits, it also expands that capability to do other things in Fort Baird and enhances what we can do in the village because it was all within the city limits. So appreciate your consideration for that, and hope that you can support our letter of, support.
Are there any questions for the mayor? Clerk?
I guess I do have a question, but it's actually for Charlene. How would that affect our fire department? The county fire department that's within that section?
I believe that the statute has changed that allows county fire departments to be within the boundaries of a municipality. Isn't that correct? That language
That
changed.
is correct.
towards the end of the-
A number of years ago, they changed it where that, fire departments could be within the city limits and it has no effect on their district.
That's
I don't-
the thing I have.
I don't have any experience with that, but the legislation did change.
Further questions? Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is a question for the mayor, but maybe not the last meeting, but the meeting before, someone was here to talk about a piece of land in this area. Harry, maybe you remember this. Jesse Franklin Owens was talking about a piece of land.
The village is by Representative Pierce.
Right. Is that included, that property included in this? I can't really read this.
No, it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
This land is all state land, right? Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Yeah, and that land was federal land, so they can't possibly be the same. But this is essentially the eastern boundary of the land that Representative Pierce is talking about.
Probably the cemeteries between them.
Could be. Or between them at the heart of it, and then down south it might be. Okay.
Well, actually down south is ours.
It's ours. It's to the east of.
If I may say one thing, right now Fort Bayard Medical Center is having issues. The state engineer came out and talked to them about having too much marshland due to the lakes that they have out there on the site. With it being within the village's city limits, the village could go out and help them repair those leaks where they don't have the manpower, nor the equipment, nor the funding to do that. This would help with their water situation in the fact that they're now not in violation with the state engineer's office for having too much marshland.
How are they buying, who are they buying their water from?
Right now, the medical center itself, they are buying from the village of Santa Clara. I'm talking about the spring water that comes in to the site.
Oh, thank you. I thought they were buying and spilling so much water they had marsh. Okay.
No.
So, Sheila, if the village of Santa Clara then goes in and repairs those leaks, are you going to get reimbursed for that? Paid for your time and effort? Or would that just be part of your city budget if it was annexed? How would that work?
That can be combined. It would help the state get funding for the infrastructure to repair those leaks.
So that you might get some benefit from that.
Right, and then we can go in and help them do those repairs.
And get paid for it.
Right, because we have the manpower and the equipment to do the repairs.
Further questions?
And just for clarification, you're actually just trying to annex it. It's not that you're taking over any type of ownership.
We just want to annex it.
Just makes it tax.
Just for explanation.
Right.
Have you polled all the residents? Just kidding.
We've had issues, like with the AmeriCorps and YCC and things like that, where it's questioned, it's not in your jurisdiction, so the insurance for the workman's comp is kind of complicated. With the AmeriCorps, they're covered by the federal government, but YCC is covered under our insurance, which our general liability only encompasses our city limits, which we have YCC at this moment outside our city limits working on the fort. They do have permission to be out on the fort from the state, but then we have that crossover on insurance coverage for them.
So we clean up those jurisdictional issues.
Yes.
Okay, further questions? Ready for motion? Yes. Top of the page.
My dad. No doubt. Just barely. Never let it happen again. It must be right on the line. I move to approve the letter of support of the Village of Santa Clara to annex the old Fort Bayard Hospital track.
Second.
Any discussion? Further discussion? Call for the vote then. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Agenda item G, approve or disapprove New Mexico County's voluntary employee loan credit counseling benefit program in partnership with True Connect.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve the New Mexico Association of Counties Voluntary Employee Loan Credit Counseling Benefit Program in partnership with True Connect.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Clerk, show that I abstained.
Agenda item H, approve or disapprove a letter to the New Mexico Department of Transportation for UTV use.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the letter to New Mexico Department of Transportation for the UTV use.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Agenda item I, approve or disapprove out-of-state travel to Washington, D.C. for Charlene Webb, County Manager, and Michelle Arish, Planning Director, to attend the White House Conference for New Mexico counties.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve out-of-state travel to Washington, D.C.
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Better than me in July.
That's right.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Spent many a miserable hour at left field in July outside of D.C.
It's horrible.
I guess they have air conditioning, huh?
Not what?
No?
It's hot there.
Left field,
Agenda item J, approve or disapprove revised 2017 PERA Volunteer Firefighter Annual Reporting Form from Cliff Gila.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the revised 2017 PRA Volunteer Firefighters Annual Reporting Form.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Well, I'll confess I had not looked at this. Is there anything I should be thinking about? No,
Say the report.
I was hoping that it's corrected, so, just making sure
You have to amend it.
before I actually vote.
Any discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Let's don't do K again.
Okay, let's don't. L, approve or disapprove Agreement A-1817, Professional Services Agreement between Grant County Surveillance Program and Felix Ortega. Can we do L and M together?
Sure.
And M is approve or disapprove Agreement A-1818, which is a Professional Services Agreement between Grant County and Luis Alvarado.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Sorry. That lunch is calling here. Item N, approve or disapprove Agreement A-1819 between Grant County and the High Desert Humane Society for the provision of animal control services in the unincorporated portions of Grant County. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item O, approve or disapprove Agreement A-1820, Department of Homeland Security and the Emergency Management Subrecipient Grant Agreement for Operation Stone Garden 2017. Is there a motion?
2017?
Chairman, I'd like to make...
Oh, what is that?
Yeah.
It should be 2018.
No, it's still Stone Garden 2017? Yeah.
Enough said. Till October.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement number A-1820.
It's the end of 2018 now, right?
I'll second that. Any discussion?
Whichever it is.
As long as we, specify whichever grant agreement is accurate.
It's on blank.
I'll amend my motion to include 2018 if that's what we need to do here.
Federal fiscal 2018 in September 30th.
That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?
It is a, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, if you look at the agreement that was in your packet, it is a 2017 State Homeland Security Grant Program.
Okay.
It's a program for 2017 that's funded now.
Thank you for checking that out. Okay, thank you. So the motion's correct, and a second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item P, Commissioner Edwards?
Mr. Chair, I move that we table item number A, agreement number A-18-21 bargaining unit contract for 2018-2020 in lieu of information, late information.
What? That's not what we want to do, the resolution.
The Q is R-1818. She has this.
I have the one for two?
I have the old one too, so we're on the same page.
You can't keep those for numbers, they're no good.
Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item, well, at least we were good. Agenda item X, resolutions.
No.
Thank you. I just need to find it.
Homeland Security.
Oh, you've got another one too?
We're on item Q.
R-1818?
That's what I see.
Why is this site on the wall?
Yeah, what's up with that side?
Boy, you guys are... Well, that's where I was at. I said Roman numeral 10, item Q.
On the electronic agenda, it's the second of the three resolutions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm using the old, yeah, I'm going to be off now, so. Let me go back here and look at the agenda, sorry.
I'm going to adjourn.
Okay, I've got the electronic agenda now.
So what's current version is on your iPad?
I apologize, County Manager Webb.
It's really hard to run the meeting with the paper on them.
We are on item what now? R or Q? P? Okay. He just disappeared off again, so, yeah. I'm sorry about that.
So,
Yeah, so go ahead, give it a motion.
I will just make the motion that we approve resolution number R-1818, a resolution authorizing question to be presented to the qualified electors of Grant County, New Mexico on the ballot for the 2018 regular general election concerning the proposed issuance of general obligation bonds and otherwise relating thereto. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we table this for further discussion and reopen it on the budget hearing on July 30th.
Okay, now I'm with you. Is there...
County Manager Webb, you're nodding, that will not adversely affect getting this on the ballot properly.
No, sir, I verified that with our council, who's here. I'm asking you your questions to him directly. I'm sure he's in during several hours if you'd like to.
Yeah, really, give him a chance to actually talk.
Right, so you didn't make the trip for
Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, perfect.
That's a new one.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Louis Crosco with the Brody Law Firm in Albuquerque, serving as the county's bond counsel. I think the question was whether delaying the adoption of the resolution would adversely affect putting the propositions on the ballot for the general election. Correct. So as I understand it, you're contemplating putting it on the agenda for the July 31st special meeting. That should be fine. We've calculated a time schedule for all of the activities that need to occur in order for the bond questions to appear on the general election ballot. And there's some room into August that you could adopt the resolution. So July 31st should be just fine.
So for the record, I think that means on July 30th, correct? Not the 31st.
Is it July 30th? Yeah, that's it. Same effect.
And we would still at that time be able to adjust the amount of the bond measure.
You certainly could make any revisions to the resolution that the council deemed appropriate at that time.
And so we could amend both the amount and the purpose at that time?
You can amend the purposes so long as those are within the purposes that are authorized under the statute and within the bounds that are provided for in Article 9, Section 10 of the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my intention is if you are looking at adjusting that amount to increase that, I will have Lily from Hilltop Securities do some additional analysis of different amounts. We can go up to 8 million. So she will provide us some further analysis to see how that might work for us, if the term stays the same or we have to go out to 20 years. And she will prepare that for us, and I will get that to you for your consideration prior to July 30th.
So do you need some direction from this commission now, or whether we're in favor of that? Or we can't really act on it?
No, we know through the process that we can go up to 8 million, so we will look at the 8 million, and then you can determine, I believe we can determine at that time what the use.
Well, so I wanted to address the point Commissioner Caston just mentioned. The 8 million is not our bonding capacity limit, right? My understanding is that's double digits.
Right, this is the amount that will not raise anyone's current tax rate.
And just so that my thinking is clear, we've just had considerable discussion about helping the hospital. And if helping the hospital involves raising taxes, people have been put on notice, that's a possibility. So I would appreciate the analysis, absolutely. But I'm not accepting at the moment that staying with the current tax rates is what we have to do.
Excuse me if I may, yes, you're absolutely correct to answer your previous question. The county's current total bonding capacity is in excess of $32 million. The $8 million and potentially $9 million is what would be supportable by the current 1.138 mill levy. And I can certainly provide additional analysis to show you the tax impact of going above that $8 or $9 million amount, going to 10 or 12 or whatever this commission would like to see. If you can give me some direction through Charlene, Ms. Webb, sorry, and I can bring back that analysis for you. That way you have those numbers in front of you to look at before the meeting on July 30th, and you can make a determination at that point, and we can advise bond counsel on redrafting the resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I ask Lily a question?
Sure.
Is it your advice, under the current situation and what we're looking at, that we go above and increase that above the 8 million?
It definitely
Does it get complicated?
It doesn't get more complicated. It definitely seems like you have the community support to be able to do so, and that's always the key question in a bond election. Does the community support the question or the dedication of the proceeds enough to turn out to vote for that? And it seems like that's the case here, so we don't anticipate that being an issue.
So if they had the option of not increasing their taxes and giving a little to the hospital, or increasing their taxes, so if the entire thing, would this be, so if they, well, I'm just worried that they're going to vote against it and then we lose our opportunity.
Well, I can show you the exact amount, what the actual impact would be, and we can break that down on a per household basis to give you an idea of, the actual dollar amount, like, is that going to be $30 per $100,000 of property value or whatever that ends up being?
I guess my question is, would it be more feasible to consider a hospital bonding issue on a completely separate election, so that it doesn't hamper our efforts to do what the county needs to do? I mean, I know the hospital is important, and I don't want to be misconstrued as saying I'm not supporting that.
Right.
But these are critical issues for us, and if we're raising people's taxes, is that going to be their excuse to say no? I'm concerned.
And that was my concern. I think having the 8 million or 6 million, whatever we have on one, and also 2-4 million, whatever we decide for the hospital on another.
And you can certainly do that, and you could even do it at the same election if you wanted to as a separate question, or you could do it at a subsequent election. It's either way would work.
I would support the separate question also.
I think now that the momentum is going, I think it needs to be on this next election. No, but it's a hospital. Yeah, separate.
Yeah, okay.
So why we have in the hospital tied to it.
So if we did 2 separate questions. Okay, 3 separate questions. If we do 10 questions. So our initial conversation was $6 million that would not raise people's taxes.
That's correct.
If we did it in separate questions, would the For example, would the first $6 million not raise people's taxes, but then anything subsequently asked for raise people's taxes?
It would be difficult to clarify that, I believe, to the public, but we're more than happy to take part in town halls and education sessions to...
I'm not asking about the clarification, I'm just asking, is that what it would be?
So as it currently stands, the resolution authorizes $4 million. The resolution that was to be considered today authorizes $4 million for roads and $2 million for remodeling and improvement projects to public buildings, and that would not increase taxes. Adding on an additional $2 million, potentially $3 million, to fund hospital projects, again, would not raise taxes, but if you go beyond that, you would be looking at a tax increase.
So my question is, if we ask them on separate questions, so let's just use the $9 million, for example, and that's on question 1, that would not raise their tax.
That's correct, I'm sorry,
If
I
we
misunderstood.
voted question 2 for another 5, that would raise their tax, but only for that 5.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
But of course, they might vote yes on 5 and no on 9. And then the taxes go down.
Actually, I think, I'm leaning towards one question because hospitals is one of the descriptions that we could use it for.
So it would still, what you could do is you could amend your, if that's what you're wanting to do, under the first question, it's remodeling and addition bonds, and hospitals are one of the categories that is included in the statute that's allowable for you to do. So you wouldn't necessarily have to raise anyone's taxes, you could just amend that amount. Right. Say $4 million and $4 million.
4 for roads and 4 for other things, and then spend 2 at the county and 2 at the hospital.
Possibly 3, right?
Possibly 3. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
And so, as far as the separate question issue, I think all 5 commissioners, it'd be helpful for promotion of this if all 5 commissioners were behind it. I'd like to see what's in line for the hospital, because the conversations I've had with GRMC Board of Trustees is they want a year to prove themselves before they go to the taxpayer. I would favor that. So I also might favor something that would help with capital expenses at the hospital, but I'd have to see that, so we'll have to have more discussion.
Well, I think any help that they can get at the hospital should be provided for them. If we're going to be able to get an extra $3 million without charging the residents of Grand County, then I think we need to do it and provide them the help.
Without a tax increase.
Yeah, no tax increase. I think you could probably get
that only makes
the roof
sense.
done and the heating and cooling for $3 million.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, I like Mr. Cass's specific answer. He said, would you repeat your comment?
I said that $3 million quite possibly could replace all their heating and cooling units and replace their roof. We'd be close.
Well, but you gotta keep in mind, we have other projects that need funding.
What's the roof?
Right?
At the hospital?
No, in the county.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about using 3 for those purposes,
3 of 9.
we have 8 or 9, it's not clear, so maybe it can go to 9. Right? I know. Right. I'm still on the side of a separate question, so we can actually get the people to tell us what they're willing to do. But I understand arguments both ways, and I look forward to talking about it more.
And we can discuss this at the budget hearing.
And just one more comment, Mr. Chair, if I may. If you decided to go up to the maximum amount that would be allowable by the current levy, you could always hold a subsequent election. Say, you said the hospital wanted the opportunity to prove themselves after a year. You could always go out to the voters again to request additional funds at that time.
Okay.
Steve, yes, that's the direction I'm going.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, when you say that there would not be an increase to the property taxes, that's if they extend the maturity to 20 years, correct?
That's correct. We would not be able to do the shorter term that we had discussed at the previous commission meeting of 10 years or pay it off sooner. We would be looking at going out the maximum of 20 years. But I would note that rates are very favorable to that at this point. We're looking at a very flat yield curve. You're not paying more for borrowing far out into the curve. So if you're going to do it, now is a favorable time to do so.
And if I may add one comment to that, Ms. Dayani is absolutely correct that you could always go back to the voters to ask a subsequent question, although the amendments to the Local Election Act in practicality would mean that it would probably most likely be a mail ballot only election. So it's not really quite clear how the electorate is going to react to mail only ballot elections versus a general election ballot that you have here.
Okay.
Just one more thing. I just want to welcome Mr. Luis Carrasco back home. He actually is a graduate from Cobre High School and a cousin of mine.
Yes.
So thank you very much
It's
for
good to
coming
be
back.
practicing in my home county for a change. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're sorry you're related to Gabe, though.
Did you hear that, Mary Ellen?
I said it quietly so she wouldn't hear it.
God bless, that's a learning.
No, he's, okay, you'll have to get it from him.
So was there a motion? Did I motion? That has to be motion.
You made the motion, and it was seconded, right?
I don't know if you seconded. I'll second the motion to table.
Any discussion further? All in favor? Motion carried. Now, please tell me where we are, because I can't write on this thing, so I don't know where we're at.
We're on
R.
It's 1817.
R is
1817.
We're going back in time.
Approve or disapprove resolution 1817. A resolution amending the position classification schedule and compensation plan for Grant County. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, so discuss it. We approve Resolution 1817, amending the position classification schedule and compensation plan.
Second? I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Really? That's it? No discussion needed from the manager? You're happy with it?
Yes.
We talked about it on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we have?
And it has no effect on those.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
ready for the vote.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
It hasn't voted on
I think we're on item F.
Me?
Award or reject request for proposals for professional services and contract regarding engineering, environmental, archaeological, and surveying services.
Mr. Chairman, I move to award, we got two of them, right?
Engineering and so you're awarding, the recommendation that Jacob made to you was to award engineering and
Surveying services?
surveying services you are rejecting.
Right. Okay, I move to award the engineering services to, is it Souder Miller?
Souder Miller and Bohemian.
All right, I'll get it.
Is there a second?
Well, if I heard the motion correctly, we are awarding the general engineering services contract in this RFP, whose number I've lost. 1805, thank you, to Souder Miller and Bohemian Houston.
Right. Was there a second?
Second. Discussion.
So when you award it to two different firms, what determines which firm does each firm provide a different type of service?
No, we've had, historically in this county, I know we've had two architects on staff, we've had two surveyors on staff, we've had our on contract, so it's an ability to utilize them in whichever area they, for example, Bohemian Houston probably has more experience with airports, Souder Miller is better on roads, so we utilize them what they're better served to do, and we try to equal out we try to make it equitable, we try.
Why isn't the surveying portion on our agenda?
Because we're
If the
rejecting it.
recommendation is to reject surveying,
Don't we have to actually do that, though? And so it should be on the agenda?
I mean, all I made was a motion to approve the engineering.
Yeah.
So we
So
still
just
have,
okay.
I was going to do that next.
It's also RFP 1805?
yes, it was all done at the same RFP, and I'm sure you will never do it again.
Sorry for contributing to that.
No, okay. We thought we had a really good idea.
You're sticking the bear, man.
Okay, so the motion is to accept engineering services. I will abstain from all of these votes for potential conflict of interest. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
I move that we reject the portion of RFP 1805 that covers surveying services.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Mr. Chairman,
No conflict there.
I move to recess the Grant County Board of Commissioners.
Second.
Okay.
There's no
Okay,
discussion on that one.
Yes, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Call to order the, wow, I ran out of food.
You're doing great, Grant County
Board of Commissioners.
The Health Claims Board of, the Healthcare Claims Board.
Bingo.
Call to order. And our first item of business is to approve or disapprove the June 2018 health plan claims in the amount of $72,670.65. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Is there a
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Commission session's back in. Commission meeting's back in session, and we'll stand for elected official reports.
We don't have to stand, right?
Okay, right.
Just checking.
No report.
Mrs. Clerk. Mr. Treasurer.
Okay, currently, we're at 92.58% of the total for 2017 property tax collections, and so we still have an outstanding $439,000 on the 2017 taxes. During the month from June the 11th to the 18th of July, we collected $113,741.60 for the county portion of it, and year ending June 30th, we ended up with collections of $27,018,711.82, and from July 1st to the 18th of July of this year, we've collected $355,453.38 so far for all entities. And I thank my employees for doing an exceptional job. Have had some more issues and have had to be out, and they've just taken up the slack, and I really appreciate their help. So I stand for any questions.
Questions? A brief question. How much of the $439,000 that's outstanding is due to appeals? Appeals of bills and values.
That's not
in there at all.
That's not in our purview. That's something that the assessor's office deals with, and the only stipulation, though, if somebody protests their value, they have to pay the taxes. If they don't pay them, they're considered delinquent.
So you don't track?
Most of those people, what I've seen, they have already paid, even though they're protesting. But I believe the protest has already been done, right? They've been finished.
Yes, we have hearings scheduled in the next few weeks.
So most of those people will pay their taxes, even though they're protesting, because that's part of the statute. It has to be paid before they can protest it. Then if there's adjustments made, then it does happen that they either pay or they're billed the difference if it's more, or they're given credit if it's less.
Sure. It's obvious that people haven't paid who are required to pay. And so I was just looking for what percentage of that can be explained by people not paying, even though they're required to, because they're protesting. It sounds like we don't track that because the assessor and the treasurer don't share that information.
Not really, no, we don't.
Further questions? That's all of the elected official reports, commissioner reports. I have nothing. Does anyone else have? Mr. Brown?
I'm looking forward to a good night's sleep.
Okay. I think a lot of employees at Gila Regional found there too. Okay, is there any further business to come before adjournment?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.